Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast. I'm Louie, and I'm once again joined by my dude, Grimey.
What's up, everybody? Man, it feels like forever.
Little hiatus there. Grimey's appearances. My man's he's a busy dude. He got shit going on. Leftover pizza business going on, and the holidays.
LPB. Taking care of LPB. Yeah.
LPV, there you go. You got that. You got the holidays. We took a little break from our Universal. I know what we've gotten like one or two comments where people are like, "Oh, I'm digging these episodes, these Universal Monsters episodes. Keep doing them." Then 4 months go by where we don't do one.
Just ghosted everybody. Yeah. It does feel like there's a little bit of space in between the last one and this one, but we're back on our shit and we're ready to get it.
2025. We're going to be back doing this. And we got a lot of movies. This is going to take time.
We do, man.
When we first started doing this, we said this is a long haul thing. But we're here and we're going to crack into a film, not a popular character. He's popular, but I wouldn't say he's top tier. Top tier in the like when even looking at the universe, well, there's a reason maybe he's not on. Maybe he is up there. But even when you look at the classic Universal Monsters logo, my man's not up there. He's missing.
Is he really? Oh yeah, you're right. Holy shit. Wow.
He's not up there. But maybe you can't see him.
Could be it. John Cena?
John Cena, yes. And the film we're going to be discussing is 1933's The Invisible Man.
All right, you fools. You've brought it on yourselves. Everything would have come right if you'd only left me alone. You've driven me near madness with your peering through the keyholes and gaping through the curtains. And now you'll suffer for it. You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you.
Now, Grimey, was this a first-time watch for you?
So this was a first full watch for me, but not my first time seeing it. So I watched it, about 3-4 years ago, threw it on during Halloween, just on a whim, just being bored. And, man, I'm getting up in that age where, like, I watch movies at night and I sit down, and whether I'm on the couch or I'm in bed, I fall fast asleep whether the movie's good or not. So, like, I didn't remember. But, we're about to get into this. I can't tell you if I liked it or not yet, but this was certainly the first. Right, yeah. I know. I always race into, well, I really loved it, or this movie sucks. No, this was my first full watch through.
I'll admit The Invisible Man is not one of the monsters I revisit that often. And when we eventually get to the sequels, a lot of the sequels I have not seen. So this was not a first time watch, but it's one that anytime I do watch it, I've seen it before. It's like I'm watching it for the first time. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of those movies that you've seen a couple times, but it's usually like an 8-9 year period in between watches where you're just like, I feel like I forgot everything that happens in this movie, minus some iconic stuff that I think everyone remembers when it comes to the Invisible Man, specifically his appearance, I'd say, and the performance. The performance, we'll get into him in a couple of seconds here. The performance is something that always stuck with me when compared to some of the gentlemen we've covered so far with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just kind of how animated this guy is when he portrays the Invisible Man. So, Invisible Man, released November 13th, 1933. We have not left the 30s yet, Grimey.
We have not, man. November 13th. Is that what you said?
Yeah, November 13th, 1933.
So this is actually a Thanksgiving movie. That's perfect.
Right now, time of this recording, it's winter for Grimey and I, where we live. It's cold, snow.
Yeah, it's very fitting.
Yeah, very fitting film. A very wintry movie. Not holiday. There's no Christmas or turkeys, even though the release date, like you said, is very close to Thanksgiving. Might as well be a Thanksgiving film. But it is a cold movie, which I dig. Snow plays into the angle. Snow plays into the plot. Funny enough, the movie is bookend. It's bookended by snow. I don't know if you caught that, Grammy. Beginning and end.
I did.
Snowstorms, which kind of play into, spoiler, the Invisible Man's demise. But yes, this was directed by James Whale, Frankenstein, infamous director. He's a big hit under his belt already with the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, which we are slowly approaching. We're getting there, guys. We're
excited for that one.
We're getting to Bride of Frankenstein, and also another film I mentioned that I love, and kind of Universal film, kind of Universal Monsters film, kind of not, The Old Dark House, which I feel like eventually you and I need to do a full episode diving into that, because technically not a monster in that film, but it has all the kind of ingredients of a Universal monster movie.
We've only got 53 of them to go. We might as well stack one more on top. What's another?
Only 105 more films to go.
Yeah. What's one more?
Film number, I don't know, what are we, 5, 6 now?
I was to say, is this 5 or 6? I don't even remember.
I don't remember either. So listeners, correct us if you can in the comments. An adaptation. This is an adaptation. Now, here's where things get interesting. This is kind of like a behind the scenes thing. This is an adaptation of the H.G. Wells novel, same name, Invisible Man. And he had to approve of this script before it went into production. So he was heavily involved in kind of the direction this movie would go. And he, as a writer, he probably didn't have much say, but they wanted his blessing, I'm guessing, because the source material was his. But here's where things get kind of bizarre. And I'm surprised that since he had to kind of approve the script, there's also some influence from the 1932 novel by Philip Wiley called The Murderer Invisible. So,
okay. See, I missed that.
So it grabs the H.G. Wells story, but takes elements from The Murderer Invisible. And what it's taking from that novel is more of like the horror-centric stuff. So the killing, like all the like the darker aspects of that story are put into H.G. Wells kind of. They use some of that in his story, in H.G. Wells' original version of The Invisible Man, because I think his version is a little tame and more science fiction from what I read, I think. And where the Philip Wiley novel, The Murderer Invisible, is more like a horror story. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I read so much about this to make sure that I wasn't just saying shit that I didn't know. And man, I found so much contradictory bullshit online. I'm like, well, I guess without actually reading both novels or one novel, like I have no idea if any of this stuff's true or not. But yeah, I found so much information online that just like constantly contradicted this, that, and the other thing. But like, so this, I don't know if you read it, but this is just a little bit different from the book itself, right? And then the guy, the H.G. Wells, he had to approve it, like you said, and almost didn't.
Yeah, because I don't think it's kind of like one of those situations. I compare it to like Michael Crichton in Jurassic Park, where he didn't write the screenplay for the film, but since it was his book, he kind of felt he was guarding it, protecting it from being a giant piece of shit, which I respect that. And I feel like that happens with a lot of, I think Stephen King is the only dude that's just like sells the rights to his novels. And if he hates the movie, he'll tell you he hates the movie, but he doesn't kind of loom over it. Like he doesn't loom over the production dictating what he feels is right and wrong, because at the end of the day, they bought the rights. The production company bought the rights to make the film. So I think it's just a situation like that. And if you think about it, this is 1933, the film industry was quite different. So it's very different than it is today. So I'm sure they allowed him more leeway and say, because it was such, film, especially like, talkie movies with dialogue where you can hear the people. Dude, what was like not that long? It was like 1933. So silent films weren't that, that far ahead, when films didn't even have dialogue. So again, the film industry was quite different. But yeah, it's a combination of both those stories, the movie. That's what I saw. So I read shit online like you did, I'm sure. And I also watched this about 30-minute documentary on the Blu-ray, which I'd assume has some pretty accurate behind the scenes information on the film.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
it's
I would
on
hope
the
so.
Blu-ray.
Jesus.
It's on the Invisible Man Universal produced Blu-ray. So that's kind of where I got it. And they say the same thing when comparing kind of both books and then the final product. And it stars, so first but not last, Universal monster movies for this guy. Claude Rains as Griffin, the Invisible One, as he's credited in the opening credits. Did you notice that, Grimey?
I didn't notice that. Thanks for pointing that out to me. The Invisible One.
That
Boy, that's I love that. Very ominous. And
I know.
very, very spooky.
You know, when we watched Frankenstein, it says, Frankenstein ?
Yeah, question.
They didn't want to reveal. So it's like they did something similar here, but they did showcase the actor portraying the character, but instead of calling him the Invisible Man or his character's name, they call him the Invisible One. And that's his name in the credits. I did enjoy that.
That is
funny
awesome.
enough, eventually, 10 years later, I'm pretty sure, I think it's 1943, he's going to go on to portray another disfigured character in Phantom of the Opera, which we will get to one day. We've got
a while from now, probably.
yes,
but,
yes, we've got a lot of movies in between that one. But yes, Phantom of the Opera, he did get to play that character. A decade later, he came back for another one of these iconic characters. And we're going to get into his performance because I think I kind of teased it early on. When we get into kind of some of our favorite things, our likes and stuff, we'll dive deeper into his performance because he carries. I will say that now. And Grimey, I'm pretty sure you agree with
absolutely.
me. He carries this one. He is.
Mm-hmm. In a fascinating way, too. Like
Yes.
you said, we'll get into it.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Gloria Stewart as Flora. Funny information. I didn't even realize this while I was watching the movie. This is Old Rose from Titanic.
That bitch.
Throwing that
She had
diamond.
the diamond the whole time. Threw it in the fucking river or whatever. The lake. I don't know what it is.
The
Ocean?
sea. It was the sea, Grimey. Yeah, poor Bill Paxton.
R.I.P., buddy.
Yeah, man. Dude, she threw it in the goddamn sea. The whole story was about this. They were looking for this goddamn diamond. She had it the entire time. But yes, I thought that was interesting. Old Rose.
It is interesting. Very cool.
While I was watching it and I was just doing research, I was like, oh shit, it's Old Rose from Titanic. So,
Like when you saw her, you thought it? Because, man,
No,
I
no.
never would have guessed.
no, not when I saw it.
Okay, I was gonna
When
say, like,
looking up
goddamn.
research. When I was looking up the film, it took me a second. I realized, I was like, oh shit, this is, and even in the documentary I watched, because I think this documentary was produced in like the late 90s or early 2000s for like the Laserdisc, I'm pretty sure. They even say like, oh, she was in the recently released Titanic. So James Cameron's Titanic. So there you go.
Nice.
She
Nice
was
little
in the
bit of
game
trivia.
a long time. Yeah, she was around many years from The Invisible Man to Titanic. What an insane career this woman has had. I'm sure she's made. Wow. I'm pretty sure she's also in The Old Dark House, which I mentioned before.
Nice.
Two more actors that I'll be very honest, I don't have much information on them because the other two stood out to me the most. We've got William Harrigan as Kemp. He's sort of the co-male lead. I'm trying to think. He's kind of not a love interest. Yes and no. But he's kind of the other male douchey guy in the film, I would say.
Yeah,
he's kind of a douche.
He's definitely kind of a douche. Yeah, I don't know. There really isn't much to say about him. I feel like he's just kind of there. Like, I mean, he's important, but
I'll say this: I feel like we were supposed to be rooting for him, but I was still rooting for the Invisible Man.
right? Yeah.
So what does that tell you about his character? We'll get into that as well. Mm-hmm. And then last on my list here, we've got Henry Travers as Dr. I believe it's Craney or Cranley. Probably butchering that.
It's got me, man.
I believe it's Dr. Craney. Craney is how you pronounce it. Craney.
Right, well, he's Craney from here on out, at least in this episode.
And he's Flora's dad in the film. So there's always got to be, if you notice, before we go into some more behind the scenes shit with the Invisible Man, if you notice, there is a specific formula, and I know we've kind of said something like this in previous Universal Monster episodes. They all have the antagonist monster. They've got the love interest. For some reason, the father or caregiver,
Always the father,
is also a supporting character. And then another male lead that's sort of either the friend or the coworker, who
like
is also
kind of thing.
who's also skeezy, whatever, and wants to bag the lead's woman. Like, I don't know why that is it happened in Frankenstein. It's happened in a couple of films. So I just think that's a really interesting kind of dynamic to have with these characters. And I think, and this can great segue into the behind the scenes kind of this film. So since James Whale directed this, you get the sense, and a lot of the like talking heads in the documentary and some of the stuff I read, James Whale was trying to take all the mistakes and the stuff that was forced on him in Frankenstein. So like in Frankenstein originally, he didn't want Dr. Frankenstein to survive. Remember at the very end, you see him at the hospital and he's alive. He somehow survived the burning windmill situation.
Yeah.
So they made him put that in as a happy ending. So with this film, he basically wanted the woman at the very end, the female lead, to have no one. Basically, she's screwed. Her fiance and the other dude that was trying to steal her away both die. So she's left by herself.
Wow,
so
I didn't really think about that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and in the documentaries, and again, some of the stuff I read, that's kind of, he wanted to do basically that was his original concept for Frankenstein, and the studio persuaded him and sort of forced him, the producers and stuff, forced him into adding this happy ending, which he didn't want to do.
Put him in a corner. Yeah. So he was like, listen, I'm going to do it this time, motherfuckers.
Exactly. And at this point, he had some success. So he's had some swag. You know, he had a little extra say in the final cut and where the film would end up and what would happen in the story. So, you know, when you make a film like Titanic, Titanic's on my brain. When you make a film when you make a film like Frankenstein, that's a huge success for Universal Monsters. They're going to let him do whatever he wants, I'm sure. They're like, all right, you can kill off everybody at the end of this film, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of cool because there's a lot of parallels between his James Whale, his Frankenstein, and then his version of the Invisible Man. If you look at it, there's a lot of similarities, minus the monster and the lead male character are kind of merged into one. Whereas Frankenstein, it's sort of separate. Then you've got the shady friend and then the father. So like there's there's 4 characters instead of 5 in the Invisible Man. Another thing, James Whale didn't. So after Frankenstein, he did not want to be labeled a horror guy. So he didn't they wanted him to direct, I believe, Bride of Frankenstein quickly. Like they wanted it to be a success for him and like, okay, we'll make a sequel to this. And he went on to direct Old Dark House and another film that I believe bombed. And he came back to The Invisible Man because he was looking for a successful film and he knew he would have some success after Frankenstein. So the guy had a weird career because he got famous and, you know, had a lot of success with this monster movie, didn't want to be branded a monster movie guy, left, had a couple failures, a couple successes, and then came back to monster movies.
The monster, he kills it. That's crazy. Yeah, it always seems like the people that don't want to do them are like, or not them in general, but like just people in general. The thing that they least like is the thing that they seem to be good at. Isn't that weird how that works out?
I mean, you look at a guy like John Carpenter. The guy always wanted to direct. He always wanted to direct like westerns and stuff like that. Never got to do it. Like he directed movies that are influenced by. They're obviously Western influenced, but he never wanted to be a horror guy. Wes Craven never wanted to be a horror guy. They just became horror guys. Some of them embrace it because they're like, all right, I'm finding success. This is my job. This is a dream job as a director. just embrace it, man. You direct. You direct monster movies. Just accept it. Especially when you're like, obviously this is 1933, so he doesn't know how, famous he would be. Like there's biopics about this guy, about James Whale and his, involvement in this kind of franchise of films. So kind of crazy. But yeah, he did not want to make this movie and eventually came back to it. Funny enough, you know who they wanted when James Whale was offered The Invisible Man, and he backed out. You know who they offered the directing gig to? Can you guess?
Directing?
You don't even have to know you don't even have to know his name. It's a film we covered already. They offered it to that director. Can you guess the film? One we were surprised by.
No. I'm horrible with names.
Damn.
I forgot all of them already. I'm so sorry.
How could you forget about our boy Eric the Gorilla? Murders in the Rue Morgue. So they wanted
Eric to do it?
They wanted Eric the Gorilla to direct the film. Yes, he was going to come on set and direct The Invisible Man.
Bring your gorilla suit. This is going to work out perfectly.
Get over
That's
here.
That's cool,
Eric.
though.
Give you a couple bananas, get behind the camera, move things along. But no, Robert Florey, who directed Murders in the Rue Morgue, he almost directed it when James Whale left the project and didn't want to do it. So
wow, that's awesome.
I wanted to bring it back to Eric the
I
Gorilla.
would have never in a million years guessed that one, to be honest with you. Oh my, I'm terrible with names.
You listen, that again, I think we might have said it in our Murders in the Rue Morgue episode. It's the forgotten Universal monster movie, and it's great.
It sure is, man.
Yo, any excuse to mention Eric the Gorilla. He's in my Mount Rushmore of Universal monsters.
He's even come up in the Haunted Hangover group on Facebook.
Yes.
You all should check out, by the way.
Listen, Eric the Gorilla. Listen, he's slowly climbing up the ladder in the love of Universal monsters. But yes, that was information I thought was kind of cool that the Murders in the Rue Morgue guy almost got the job and directed.
That's cool.
Invisible Man. Another thing, and I don't know if you read this, Grimey, but Claude Rains was not the original choice for Griffin.
I did read
Invisible
this.
Man. They wanted. Yeah. Who did they want, Grammy? Who did they want?
Boris Karloff.
Yes. Or there was another person. Did you read the second name they almost wanted?
I saw that there was a second person.
Colin
I totally
Clive.
spaced on the name.
Colin Clive, who played Dr. Frankenstein in Frankenstein as well. So he wanted one of them back. And I think for a while, Boris Karloff was tied to the movie. Like he was good.
Really?
Because this took a couple years to get it off the ground. Like they made a bunch of other films. Like they wanted to make this after Dracula, but since they were having problems with like the script and the rewrites and all that stuff, it had a troubled production. They ended up making Frankenstein, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and all that shit. So they ended up The Mummy. They ended up, making other films. So yeah, it was a troubled production, and then Boris Karloff ended up leaving, and Colin Clive didn't want to do it. So it would have been a very, very different film if Boris Karloff and his lisp were the. As much as I love him, I love Boris Karloff. I don't think it would have hit the same way. Would you agree?
No, I don't think it would have either. I think what Claude brings to the table is it's perfect in every way.
Yeah, it's Boris Karloff has a really distinct voice, but I think for this performance where you don't ever see he's the Invisible Man, you never see his face. Yeah. Kind of would have Boris Karloff has a distinct voice, but I wouldn't say he's known for the voice outside of the Monster Mash where that's a parody of his voice, but he's not the type of guy where, at least to me, and I know he's done like Mad Monster Party and stuff like that where he voiced characters, but there's just something about Claude Rains, about his voice, that makes the film better.
Oh yeah. His voice, the demeanor of it, everything about it. It's just, it really fits this character, which we'll obviously get into. It just fits him so perfectly.
One more thing I wanted to mention here, and we'll get into the breakdown of what happens in The Invisible Man. When I was watching the movie, I was curious. I was like, how the hell in 1933 or 32 probably when they filmed this, did they achieve the invisible, effect where he's wearing clothes, but you can't see his hands, you can't see his face, can't see his feet. You just see like clothing he's wearing or parts of him. And I thought it was really interesting because, you know, green screen wasn't a thing, I'm pretty sure, at this point. And like,
Not
obviously no digital effects. There was none of that.
Yeah.
And what they did, and I thought this was really cool, and I was wondering, I was like, how the hell did they do this in the 30s? They covered parts of Claude Rains in black velvet.
Yes.
And then would shoot that against, and you could add to this, Grimey, if you read anything else, but they would shoot him with the velvet covering parts of his body in front of a velvet like sheet or curtain.
Yeah.
And then they would take those shots and sort of superimpose them over like the chair. So like if he was supposed to be sitting in a chair wearing like clothing, but his face is invisible, they'd take him from the velvet room covers to the actual, and I was just like, this is crazy. Like all that work to make my man look invisible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So they use the black velvet, it's a suit. So then they have a sheet in the back of your character, whoever it is, and then they actually took those shots and they put it against a separate piece of film.
Ah, okay, that's what I missed.
It's insane, an insane amount of work, and that's
so they were
one
splicing
like,
them together, basically. I'm guessing, like the two.
Yeah, exactly. And like by 1933, this is unheard of, absolutely insane. Even like this method is still studied today. And one thing that I thought was really cool is there was someone online who, I don't know who it was or when, but they had a suit, a screen used suit from the 1933 movie.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And they wanted to kind of like showcase it, how it was used in the film to make him look invisible. So they put it in this like, it almost looks like like an aquarium almost, and they put a piece of black velvet sheet in behind it, and it had it like an aperture or something, like holding another object. And when you look at it at a certain angle, it looks like it's just floating there. It's really fucking cool.
That is cool.
It's, I mean, we will get into it obviously, but there's so many different effects in this movie that like kind of revolutionized everything that we do today in film. And I think that's one very important part about this film is like, it's kind of amazing that they were able to think of a lot of the stuff that they did at this time.
And up until this point, the movies we've covered haven't really had effects. It's mostly like makeup effects to make someone look like a monster or to make them look old or decrepit or whatever. But up until this point, there hasn't been anything like camera trickery, I guess.
Sure, yeah, nothing super groundbreaking like this.
Yeah. Where in reality, the Invisible Man isn't a traditional monster in the ugly, deformed. He's deformed because you can't see him, but he's not deformed in the traditional monster sense, like most of the other Universal monsters, where they're just kind of these creatures. They're monsters. Yeah. So he's a human. You just can't see him. So that's basically.
And I think.
You know,
that's kind of the other part that I really like about this. I know we're not getting to our likes yet, but like this is what kind of made me zone more into this film, is that he's not a monster in the typical sense. You know, he's not supernatural. He's not a disfigured, entity that someone built. He is a human who goes mad.
It came to me suddenly. The drugs I took seemed to light up my brain. Suddenly I realized the power I held, the power to rule, to make the world grovel at my feet. We'll soon put the world right now, Kemp. You and I.
So the Invisible Man follows Dr. Jack Griffin, who barges into an inn one night, his entire head covered in bandages. He's wearing goggles. He's wearing like a suit. He's got a couple of strings of hair underneath the bandages poking out. And the innkeepers at said inn assume he's a burn victim, or he's
right. Yeah, there's something's wrong with him underneath all that.
Yeah, that he's just disfigured in some way. And some time passes, and we learn that Griffin is a chemist, and he's testing out different substances. Upset that the innkeepers try to evict Griffin because his room is disgusting and he hasn't paid any of his rent. He's basically just kind of freeloading there. He becomes irritated and snaps at the innkeepers with all kinds of threats. Griffin is very aggressive from the top.
Super aggressive. Mm-hmm.
Very intimidating guy.
Yeah, and this really plays into his character a lot. Like, you don't realize why it's happening until like a little bit into the film. But yeah, it plays real deep with his character.
Starts off with a bang. Like, you don't even really know. Like, we know what's going on because we know what the movie is. But like, you don't, as the audience, you're not supposed to really understand what's wrong with Griffin. Something's wrong, but you're trying to figure it out. So the innkeepers end up calling the cops to help them out because Griffin is basically telling them, like, leave me the hell alone. I'm not leaving. Go to hell. Literally. He doesn't say that, but that's kind of the approach he's giving them. Like, fuck off or I'll beat the shit out of you. Without saying that, that is what Griffin is telling these people, to the point that he even beats the shit out of the husband innkeeper there. He like smacks him up a little bit.
Smacks him, throws him downstairs, and he's not paying them, by the way. He's like 2 months behind on his rent, and they're like, yeah, I'm not paying you. I'll get it to you eventually, but I'm doing some stuff up here, so leave me alone.
So the cops show up, and this is when Griffin reveals his disfigurement is actually being invisible. Removes all the bandages. Very iconic scene where you see him take off the nose. He throws the nose at the cops, takes off the goggles, takes off the wig, and he's just laughing like a maniac and removing these bandages. And they're sort of flabbergasted at the fact that this man can't be seen. And after a scuffle, him being completely invisible in the room, tricking them like that he escaped through a window, throwing chairs at people and throwing shit at guys, at cops, he escapes. He escapes from the inn.
So this scene, I just want to back up really quick. The unraveling scene, like you said, super iconic. This is where I found some very contradicting info online.
Okay.
One source, and I'm going to say the sources, but one source says that they did one continuous take on this one scene. Another one says that it took 27 tries. Oof. Do you know which one it was? Do you have any? Did you see anything?
I do not know. I did not read about the kind of behind the scenes on this specific scene. I'd assume, since it was 1933, that they had to, because it does cut away. While he's doing it, it cuts to the cops. It cuts to him throwing the nose, if I remember correctly. So in the film, there are edits. So I would believe that it took 27 takes. Because, but then I could also see like maybe they just set up the camera on like a tripod situation. Like they had it, the camera was set down, they pointed at it, framed the shot, blocked the shot, and then just had him do that with the velvet and all that, and then make it look like he's invisible. But I can believe either one. But if you want my opinion on it, if you want Louie's, what I think, I could see it taking a couple of takes. So I could believe the 27 takes. If anyone out there knows, correct Grimey and I, because we obviously
it was a super hard question to put in Google too and find an answer. I'm like, how many times did they shoot the iconic scene of the unwrapping and the Invisible Man? I'm like, nothing came up. So yeah, help us out if you know.
I think in the doc too, there, if I remember correctly, there's no like focus on that scene specifically. Like they talk about the technique in achieving the invisibility, but they don't talk about that specific sequence. So listen, one of them is right, Grimey. One of them is the right answer. If both of them are wrong, then that's a problem. But if anyone else out there can correct us, please let us know. We'd love to know how many takes it took for the first reveal of Griffin being invisible. So while all of this craziness is happening at the inn, we meet Flora, Griffin's fiance. We meet her father, the Dr. Craney that I couldn't pronounce earlier, Dr. Craney, Griffin works for him. So Flora's dad, that's who Griffin, the Invisible Man, works for. And then we meet Dr. Craney's assistant, Arthur Kemp, who I'm going to call Kemp, who, like I said earlier, has the hots for Flora. They have an entire scene where, because Griffin's been missing for a couple of days, but where Kemp legitimately is coming on to Flora, and he's like, I want to tell you how I feel about you. Similar to what was happening in Frankenstein, if you remember, Grimey, that there was also the douchey friend. I think his name was maybe Jonathan. Maybe I'm wrong, but there was Frankenstein's friend who was also macking it to his fiance. So
yeah,
these
such a
guys
weird trope. They're like,
yeah.
listen, guys are always trying to take other dudes' wives and women from them. Let's just throw that in there for every Universal monster flick.
The worst thing about the trope is just like, it's always like a friend or like a coworker. I'm like,
It's like, oh, it was his best friend that did this. Like, what the fuck?
These leading men really need to pick their people wisely, their friends and coworkers wisely, because they're all trying to kick game to their like wives or fiancés or girlfriends.
Weird.
Very, very bizarre trope that, I'm assuming will fizzle out. Listen, it might just be a James Whale thing. It might just be something he enjoys. The type of story beats he likes to tell in his kind of film. So who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, Griffin has been missing for some time, and Flora is obviously concerned. Dr. Craney and Kemp discover that Griffin has been messing with some chemicals. Now, here's where it gets a little convoluted, because Dr. Craney's telling Kemp that there was a drug that he saw a dog take, but the dog went mad, and it was also like there was a bleaching powder involved,
Right.
which I'm assuming they're alluding that the bleaching powder is what turns you invisible, but that the other drug drives you insane. I'm saying dog and drug. The other drug drives you insane, and the bleaching powder is what makes you invisible, or that there's a component in the bleaching powder that makes you go nuts. So Griffin,
that had me kind of confused too.
It's all exposition, but basically in a nutshell, he's fucking around. He's a chemist. He's fucking around with these chemicals, and the side effect to one of the invisibility powder, I'll call it, the bleaching powder, has something in it, a component that makes you go insane, which is what's happening to Griffin. He's slowly losing it. He's a psycho. Up until this point, know he's not well, because he is screaming at everyone that tries to speak to him. So
it's very, very great character development. It is. It's a very noticeable levels between the film, like where you see him kind of, it's like he's okay in the beginning, then he goes a little bit more batshit. Then towards the end, it's just like, oh, he's like that. All right.
Towards the end, he becomes
it's
lazy,
great.
Which is his downfall. But
yeah, absolutely.
We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, later on, Griffin confronts Kemp and sort of forces him to be his partner in an attempt to cause all kinds of mayhem and destroy the world, because he's invisible. But he also wants to become visible again, so he knows how to go back and forth. He just created invisibility and created this. He wants to rule the world, basically, and there is a motive behind that. So after some murders of cops, some debauchery caused in town that involves a train derailment, and he robs money from a bank and gives it to people in the street, he eventually meets up with Flora. They finally have an interaction. And Flora, in my notes here, she's sort of his kryptonite, because it's the only time you see him calm. They have this scene together where Griffin is calm and more human and less maniac.
Yeah, it's kind of like a precursor to like the Hulk and his woman.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like how it's getting late, big guy. The sun's going down, big guy, and he kind of just dissolves back into Bruce Banner. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, she's his kind of like soft spot, basically. He's got a soft spot for her. No amount of crazy chemicals that fuck your brain up and make you go crazy and go nuts. It still kind of can chill him out, and he
tames him up.
Tames him out. Yeah, tames him. And we also learn in this conversation that he's doing this all for Flora. So he wants money, he wants fame, he wants to basically create a life for her to make him like make her proud of him. He's a proud husband,
Absolutely.
proud fiance. He's doing it for his lady.
Yeah, he has nothing to offer her before this.
Yeah.
This way, he's got everything to offer her. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, yes, destroy the world so that your fiance loves you and will marry you and you guys have riches together and all that good stuff.
He's going to build invisible armies for his wife.
Yes. Invisible armies to kind of become a dictator in the earth and just fucking destroy everybody. Okay, I'm sure Flora doesn't even like really question it in that scene. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, she doesn't even look upset. She kind of looks happy. She's like, "Oh wow, that's very thoughtful of you.
Great, you want to destroy humanity?
No questions whatsoever."
Yes, it's bizarre. We'll get to Flora we'll get to Flora later. But yeah, so Griffin learns that Kemp ratted him out to the cops and to the authorities. And Griffin basically tricks Kemp and tells him, look, mother effer, I know you told them my plan. I know you told them what I want to do and what's going on and where I'm hiding. So you know what? And this is one of the hardest, toughest deliveries of a line in cinema. It doesn't get enough credit. Like, this is a hard motherfucker right here. He tells Kemp, I'm going to kill you tonight at 10 p.m.
10 o'clock sharp, bro.
There is no 10 on the dot. You're dead.
You're a true friend, Kemp. A man to trust. I've no time now, but believe me, as surely as the moon will set and the sun will rise, I shall kill you tomorrow night. I shall kill you even if you hide in the deepest cave of the earth. At 10 o'clock tomorrow night, I shall kill you.
Tough.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, we'll talk more about the deaths and stuff, but there is a lot of killing in this movie, which is like not really part of the up until this point, anyways. Like the Universal monsters, they're not really going around killing a whole bunch of people. But Claude is just, or the Invisible Man is just going around killing people left and right. I feel like in this one, it's crazy.
It's the epitome of no fucks given, basically.
Absolutely.
That's how Griffin, that's how he's basically, like I said, he derails a train. Like, whatever. Like, I'm going to derail this whole train. And we see the derailment. So it's no joke, Griffin here. So we're winding down here at the end of the film. So after sort of a convoluted plan that the police department's putting together involving nets and protecting Kemp from Griffin and putting like soft soil down, and they have these devices that shoot out a black tar that they are hoping to shoot on him to find him and be able to locate him and then shoot him or detain him or whatever. Kemp tries to make a run for it. While they think they've got the situation under control, the cops with Griffin, Griffin tricks them, ends up finding Kemp, killing Kemp by tying him up, putting him in his car, and then driving him off of a cliff, basically. He puts, like, I think the car, he, like, puts his hand down on the, he revs up the car and lets it fly off a cliff, kills Kemp. Similar situation as the derailment. We get kind of like this great miniature shot of the car flipping and exploding on the side. Really impressive for a film that came out too, similar to the kind of just how effective the invisible effect was. These kind of miniature explosions and like derailment, car explosion work really well. I love those as well. But here is how Griffin is defeated. This goes back to him being lazy, like I said before. So Griffin is a hard-working man, been up all night, been running around naked, invisible, killing people, flirting with his fiance. He's tired. He yawns. Has to take a nap. My man needs some shut-eye. This is a guy who likes sleep, because in the film, we see him go to sleep previously in a previous scene too. So he needs his 8 hours. He needs his beauty rest.
Mm-hmm. He's always in pajamas.
Always. He likes to be
looking to honk shoe wherever he can be.
Yes. He's tired. So he finds this barn. This is the downfall of Griffin. Finds this barn, takes a nap, finds a haystack, lays in it. he's discovered by a farmer who hears snoring or like sees movement in the hay, goes to the precinct or wherever the cops are stationed, tells the cops, hey, I think this guy or there's a person in my barn. I could hear them sleeping. They're like, oh, it's the Invisible Man. And it just so happens at this very moment, there's also snowfall. So it starts to blizzard.
Yeah.
Didn't snow at all, but then starts to snow. And they're like, this is our time. This is when we can catch him. So they run over to the barn. They kind of close him off. There's like a giant group of men. There's a little bit of a scuffle. He grabs one cop, spins him around. It's ridiculous. Throws him.
Oh yeah, that was it was super ridiculous. I was like, wow. So there's a scene in what is it? Ted, the original Ted movie, where they're like showing a flashback of the couple dancing, and it's like this really really stupid like overdrawn fucking scene where they're trying to like play up on those dance movies and stuff, and he's like straddled around whatever her name is, and she's like whipping him around in circles, like really slow though. It's not very fluid. It just looks really really cheesy. It's so bad but so funny.
Basically it's a dummy strung up on something and it's just spinning in place. Like you could tell there was like a pole or something or some sort of mechanism where it's whole and just spinning, and it looks like the cop is just being flung around. Then he throws the cop at another like group of cops. So it's pretty fucking silly. So after he fucks the cops up, he runs off. It's snowing, building up on the ground. They see his footsteps. So like the main cop in this group, who we see a couple times in the film, can kind of pinpoint where Griffin is, shoots him, and then we see him fall over, and there's like a little like indentation in the snow where his body falls over, and they've shot the Invisible Man. They've detained their boy, and the film ends at the very end. We get Griffin, who's dying. They're kind of keeping him alive. You just see his, again, you mentioned the pajamas. He loves his pajamas. He's wearing like little white pajamas. And you just see his head, like not silhouette, but like his head's in the pillow. So it's like an indentation in the pillow.
Like an indent.
And Flora shows up. He's slowly passing away. And she, I love you. And this whole emotional scene and all this kind of cheesy nonsense.
Father, come quickly.
He's dying. Griffin is dying. Blah, blah, blah. Griffin slowly dies. And the film ends, which I did dig this. I did dig the ending. As he dies, he slowly becomes visible. And we finally get a shot of Griffin, Claude Rains, his face, just sitting there laying in the pillow, dead. And that was the Invisible Man.
A few chemicals mixed together, that's all, and flesh and blood and bone just fade away. A little of this injected under the skin of the arm every day for a month. An invisible man can rule the world. Nobody will see him come, nobody will see him go. He can hear every secret. He can rob and wreck and kill.
All right, Grimey. I think the best place to start when it comes to likes, and it's been something we've mentioned, is just Claude Rains, his performance. I'm going to let you start. I want to hear your thoughts on Claude Rains, because I know you really enjoyed just kind of what he brought to the table in The Invisible Man.
Okay, so yeah, Claude Rains, he was, as we said before, almost completely unknown in Hollywood when he was cast for this. And his face only appears on the screen for a few seconds at the end of the film. This guy, he was originally a stage actor, and he had this really thick Cockney accent, so like very, very thick English accent that he kind of worked tirelessly to overcome, because he was either told or he thought himself that he wouldn't make it anywhere if he had this accent, and he needed an American accent. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But like, despite being invisible for 99% of this film, he just has this very commanding performance, very good commanding voice. And this ultimately, from what I understand, kind of launched him into this Hollywood stardom. Because he went on to do a whole lot of other movies too. He did like Casablanca.
Yeah.
I think one was Notorious and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I believe. I never watched any of these, but yeah, he's in them.
Yeah. And like I said,
And
he eventually went on to portray the Phantom of the Opera. So
yeah,
worked out for him.
and I mean, there's a lot of dedication involved in this this role. He had to wear the suit, and apparently it was very, very hot wherever they were filming this. So having to wear this very thick black velvet suit that's probably just making this intense heat way worse. Like it's shows a lot of dedication. But yeah, his performance in this is just great. Very cynical.
Yeah.
Going into this movie, I kind of wasn't thinking about how scary an invisible person is. Like, I think back to the film, what was that one with Kevin Bacon in it?
Hollow Man.
Hollow Man. So
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking back to that. I remember watching that back in the day, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty scary. But like, this one for me kind of amped it up just a little bit more, I guess. Like, I just didn't really think about how terrifying it would really be. It's very psychological.
The thing with Griffin and Claude Rains' performance, and I think one of the things that stood out to me when I was watching it this time for the show was it's a really egotistical, cocky, which I think works well with, if you think about it, if you had the power to be invisible, you think you can get away with everything, like with anything.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And that's kind of what he was able to do. It's like really kind of just arrogant. He's confident in every line delivery. He really brought what you would think. And you mentioned Hollow Man. Kevin Bacon in that film portrays the character the same way almost. A little more menacing, obviously. It's more horror than science fiction. But, Claude Rains, that scene where he's talking to Kemp and he approaches Kemp and confronts him in that like study or whatever.
Yeah.
And he flat out tells him, you're going to be my partner. Not can you be my partner? You're going to be my partner. And if you don't do what I say, I'm going to strangle you.
Yeah,
like
you're
legitimately,
dead,
that's what he tells him. And he tells him that a couple times. He's like, go get me pajamas, go get me bandages, go get me glasses, go get me gloves. Like he demands, he literally pushes around Kemp the entire film.
Oh yeah.
Until when he kills him, he's still pushing until the very end. He's still pushing this dude around. So
and he can do that just because like he can be anywhere at any time. And like it creates this very unique sense of like paranoia and tension in this film. It's perfectly done.
And then the booming voice in a lot of those scenes and the maniacal laughter. He laughs a lot in this, and he just sounds like like the Joker, like a really just kind of crazy person. He'll like laugh at the fact that he's invisible, fucking around with the confused cops and the innkeepers and all that stuff. Like he just is getting a kick. He's getting high on his own supply whenever he reveals himself being invisible to people because he knows he can do whatever he wants. Dude, like having not seen this in a while and then watching it again this time, I was just like, wow, this really is. He doesn't nearly get the love he should. Maybe he does, but at least I don't see it. Like I feel like people focus a lot on like Bella, Boris, but like Claude Rains, like, and this is the only time he played the Invisible Man. So it's just weird because I feel like this is, when I think of the Invisible Man, you think of someone who is murdering people and knows he can get away with it. This is the type of kind of performance I think of, where, and I love, so there was an Invisible Man movie that came out in 2020, good movie. I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, what's good? I didn't get to watch that one.
It was really good remake, I'd say. I really dug it. And even me watching that, and I actually revisited that one recently and then watched this for the show, revisiting this. That's the one thing missing in the remake. The Invisible Man in the remake is invisible. He doesn't really do much. He's quiet the entire film, where in this film, he is showing you, he is talking to you, he is telling you, I'm going to fuck you up because you can't see me. And I kind of like, now watching this after going back and revisiting the remake, I was like, damn, that was the one thing I would have done differently in the remake. At least add a scene or two where Griffin, or I think his name is Griffin in the remake too, is so cocky that he is willing to just Like, I'm invisible, dude. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like he knows he can get away with shit.
Yeah,
Or at least he
it's-
thinks he
it's-
knows that he can get away with it.
It's so good, dude. Every scene where he's threatening Kemp is like hysterical because of how much of a dick he is. Dude,
And it
I'm
just
gonna
keeps getting
strangle you.
worse and worse, too.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And all of his monologues are great too. Like, he's got that one scene with Flora where he's talking about it, how powerful and successful of a scientist he is, like he's gonna be. And he like stands up and Flora's just looking at him and he's just going, it's so good. It is so good.
Yeah.
Like, just everything about him. I can't, and this goes back to what we said earlier, imagine Boris Karloff playing this character. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think that would have been a lot different. I mean, I'm glad if I could have them both at the same time just to compare and contrast, that'd be great, but I can't, so I'm glad that we just didn't, swap one with the other one, because I can't imagine this one being any different than it is.
And think about it. We had covered The Mummy last.
Yeah.
And that is a more reserved performance. It's a kind of quiet. He doesn't really get loud. He's really kind of mellow and talks to you like this throughout the whole movie. I don't ever see a Boris Karloff getting this animated and like
and
loud.
maniacal.
Yeah, and
I
like
just don't see
loud and
it.
stuff. So it's, I mean, and even Bella, I don't think could have done this. Like, this just, I mean, I could see Bella more than Boris Karloff because Bella has played more animated, loud characters, you know, and I'm sure Boris has too. Nothing comes to mind now, but I just think this is a role like Claude Rains just crushed, man. It's just, it's fantastic. One more thing I want to mention. You talked about all the murder and craziness. You're right. I didn't even think about that. He does, you know, when we watch these movies, it's like a strangulation here and there, but like he fucks people up in this movie.
Yeah, he does.
Dude,
Just
he
killing
bashes in
people
a
left and
cop's
right.
he bashes in a cop's head with like a stool or something at one point.
Yeah. There's one point where I don't know exactly where he's at. He's up somewhere very high, and he shoves one person down this cliff, and there's another person beside him. He's like, "Oh, you want to join him?" And then he shoves him down the cliff too. Like, just like,
What a dick.
I don't care, whatever. I can get away with this. They can't see me. Fuck it. Like, it's kind of hilarious.
Like I said, I think it just goes back to the kind of egotistical nature of the character where he's just like, oh, you don't like him? All right, go to hell too. Here you go. You're dead now. It's just, and you know, there's obviously some black humor in this. Like, it's dark humor. And they're definitely going for that. And even I think in the behind the scenes doc that I watched about the film, they say that James Whale was trying to add sort of like that scene with the guy's in the cliff and he chucks the other guy off, pushes the other guy off. Like, it's obviously supposed to be tongue in cheek. Like, he's being a dick to these guys. You want to die too? Oh, there you go. You're dead now too. So yeah, man, it's just funny how he is just nonchalantly murdering these guys. Even when he kills Kemp, he's like talking to him the entire time, tying him up, picks him up off the ground, puts him into the car, and Kemp is just like, "No, please, I'll do whatever you want. I'll be your partner." And he's just like, "Oh, it's too late now, motherfucker. You're gonna die."
Yeah.
Like, you know, pushes him, you know, drives him off the cliff. So, yeah, he's savage. Griffin's a beast in this film. Another thing,
Yeah,
here,
absolutely.
and another thing I know you wanted to talk about, and it's on my list of just things I loved, is all the use of like pulleys and string work on top of the velvet black cloak we talked about to achieve the invisibility. Dude, some of the most impressive scenes, like there's this one scene where it's after he beats up the cops when they try to, like, when they're not, it's like the cop and the other three dudes show up and then all the guys leave, but only like four of them go back up. He beats the shit out of them. Even when he pushes someone out of the way, it feels like he's really pushing these people out of the way.
It does feel pretty authentic.
And then he'll like knock over a bottle, knock over stuff on a table. He's pushing people. At one point, he hops on a bike, steals someone's bike, and drives off. And you see the bike by itself, like riding off,
just veering off.
He's a dick. He knocks over a baby carriage at one point. He's just no
chasing
fucks
after
given.
old women with just pants on. You can see like the pants are
Yeah.
skipping and frolicking, chasing after this woman who's just screaming bloody murder. It's insane the amount of special effects that went into this. It said that I guess there was a combination of 8 different techniques to achieve the invisibility effect. Like there's so much going on here that we haven't even really touched on.
He lights a cigarette
So like
at one point, right?
yeah, the cigarette stuff like that. There was the part where you see the footprints. I don't know if you looked in to see how they do that or not, but it's really interesting way of going about it. So
it's like a piece of wood, I think, right? It's like pieces of wood or something.
something like that. So it's underneath. They have these little pegs that they put underneath the snow. Okay, so like they would have a whole crew of people underneath there, and they would pluck these pegs out one by one underneath, and the footprint would drop down so that snow would make the footprint. It just stuff that I would have never thought to think of. Like, it's insane.
There's a lot of like work behind just kind of the way you could tell they really put their heads together and try to figure out how to achieve just like blocking the actors. So like when you're on set, you have to block your actors and like position people and extras and stuff like that. So like even those scenes where he grabs something and you have to time it where, okay, he knocks a beer mug off the table and then pushes 6 guys. Like they had to get that timing. And that tells me they must have done several takes to make that look right. So just a lot of that's why when we go back to like that shot, the infamous shot of him taking off the bandage, I believe it took them several attempts to do it because some of the stuff that they do in this movie, dude, that entire scene where he's talking to Kemp, like you see him light the cigarette. You see him like take a puff. It's crazy. Like there's no way in the 30s. I think that they would have just done one take and kept it moving. There's just, in my opinion, I just don't think, especially all the like the string work and line work and stuff like that. It just, to me, it was like just so much detail went into just achieving the invisibility gag, and it works so well. It does. It's like Claude Rains' performance. And the special effects, invisible stuff is what really kind of make this movie more iconic than it is. I think if he was just bandaged up for a good chunk of it, which he is, there's a lot of him bandaged up, but they went to like painstakingly like detailed,
very complex,
effects to get everything. Like there's even the one where he looks at himself in the mirror. I believe they had to shoot him with the velvet, taking off the bandage, then shoot him in his reflection by itself doing it.
Right.
And then it's crazy. And then put that all together. It's wild, man. It's really impressive. We mentioned effects and just kind of weird things. And I highlighted this in my notes that I noticed and I thought it was really interesting. It's definitely of the time. A lot of these films feel like stage plays because it's the 30s. There's a scene. It's around the 10-minute mark of the film, and this happens like around 9.5 minutes or something into the movie. So Arthur Kemp leaves the lab after talking to Dr. Carney, and he goes to comfort Flora, who's upset because Griffin's been missing. And I noticed that the camera, and it's really cool as a guy who appreciates camera work, filmmaking stuff. So the camera was in the lab. You see Kemp leave the lab. The camera continues to pan. He walks through. There's like an invisible wall there because you see the end of a wall. He walks through what looks like a pointless door. And then the camera stops on him and Flora talking and having their conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just funny because he could have easily just went around it. So it's like a fake wall was built. But it's like you can tell that like they didn't nail that technique down yet because it still feels very staged. It's like, Kemp, why did you walk through that door when there's a giant opening? These rooms were obviously connected. So that's like something I'm sure in 1933 people did not pick up on, but my ass noticed it right away. Like, oh, he walks right through. Like, why did he walk through that door? That's the most pointless door ever. There's no wall here between like dividing up the rooms. So pay attention. If you watch the film around the 10-minute mark, you notice that kind of interesting I guess like cinematography effect. And a lot of movies that happened in a lot of like Ed Wood films where like they just camera would pan. The next room was the next set was right next to it. So I just like how the camera sort of just pans by. It's fucking funny. One more thing.
Can't all be winners, I guess.
I mean, I actually like the effect. Like, I'd love to like recreate that as like a little funny homage to like these old movies, because I love these old movies. But it's just an interesting that in the 30s that was something they did, and like they didn't think anything of it. Where you don't see stuff like that in films today. Like you would never see a camera dolly or be rigged up and pass from one room to the other where there's obviously an invisible wall there that's connecting the two rooms, making the scene kind of it'll be one continuous shot. One thing we got to mention too, Grimey, an actor who makes an appearance, our boy Dwight Fry. Dwight Fry,
man, the reporter.
Random Dwight Fry appearance after showing up in Dracula as Renfield, showing up as Fritz in Frankenstein. He's been he's been downgraded to the reporter.
Reporter, really quick scene.
It's got to be a cameo.
That they did that to him.
I mean, they just like Dwight Fry, and they're like, all right, people recognize him. Like, I'm sure James Whale liked him and was like, oh, we'll stick him in here as a reporter.
I tell you, it got me. Like, I felt like I was that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where I was like, oh, wait, there it is. Like, there's fucking Dwight. Like, what's Dwight doing?
What's Mr. Fry doing in this movie? He's not playing a like little mongoloid weird guy in this. He's just a human. He's a reporter who's asking questions.
Regular old dude.
And you recognize him right away. So I love that. As soon as he popped up on screen, I too was like, oh, there's Dwight Fry. So awesome. All right, Graham, you got anything else here? Any other stuff that you really loved about the film?
Yeah, so just James Whale's unique direction, basically, like his casting choices. So he purposefully, I know we spoke a little bit about what's her name, the
Flora,
the hotel keeper.
Oh, the hotel lady, the innkeepers.
Yeah, the innkeepers. So Una O'Connor. The innkeeper's wife, specifically her distinctive high-pitched screams. That's why he casted her, her hysterical reactions. He's known for doing these horror comic relief kind of things, and I think that helped with establishing this kind of balanced dark humor. Just his direction in general, just really, really... It's a very distinct tone in this film specifically.
I want you to watch The Old Dark House, because since we've been doing these episodes,
I've never even heard of it.
I know, since we've been doing these episodes, it's like when you watch Frankenstein, this Old Dark House, you just see how great of a director the guy was. Like, he's really was when it comes to like the heyday of these, and he directed non-genre films as well. He's got a long filmography. He really was like one of the pioneers of these films. Like, he really was. He was the man, dude. He was great. Like, you just watch, like you said, like even little details like that actress, it just works well for what it is. Even though I've gotten some nitpicks, when we get to our dislikes in a few, I'll mention it. But he's good, great. He's great, man. He as a filmmaker, and he comes back. So it's not the last time we're gonna see him as a director.
Mm-hmm. But he's very just meticulous with what he does with the camera as well. Like, he insisted on shooting many scenes, I guess, in single takes just to maintain the tension. And he also used some really innovative camera angles to create a sense of invisible presence watching characters. Like, I thought that was really cool, just like trying to get the perspective of the invisible character. You know what I mean? Like, trying to figure out where would they put this guy if he was actually here listening. It's stuff that you wouldn't think to look at, I guess. But no, they nailed it, man.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I said, as I've gone on doing this with you and just watching these old movies myself, he's become one of my like favorite directors that did all this stuff. And I think even in the doc that I watched, they mentioned that all of his films, it's a James Whale production, because his toe was dipped in every aspect of the film. So he got the distinct pleasure of being able to put his name first. It's like not only was he the director, he chose the actors, he chose what things were going to look like and stuff like that. And to me, like an auteur director, or a director that's very hands-on, would like every nook and cranny, every detail of the film, even down to like a coat a character wears or the way their hair looks or the way something's lit, a director or a real director will say yes and no to decisions like that and what they want things to look like. And you could just feel it with these movies when comparing them to some of the other ones, you know, in the franchise. His tend to stand out. So I agree. It's his direction on this was impeccable. He's the man. Yeah. He's the James Whale's the man. He's the man. Mm-hmm. One more thing, and before we get into our dislikes that I have here, and I feel like we didn't brush over it, we didn't mention it, but the look of the bandaged Invisible Man, the two separate looks. You've got the kind of disheveled goggles, coat, bandages with the wig underneath. Yeah. And the fake nose, which to me I think is the look people go to first.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Where he kind of wears that
look.
Yeah, it's very steampunky. You're right. That's a good reference. And then later on is more the like royal version of the Invisible Man.
He's got like a suit, and
smoking
it's kind
jacket.
of fancier. Yeah, absolutely. He's suave. He's the suave Invisible Man.
He's got like those cool sunglasses that block the sides, the front. He's got his bandages are clean, no fake weird wig. He's got like I said, the smoking jacket. He's just sitting there smoking cigarettes and eating meals. He's living the lap of luxury there in the mansion, the Invisible Man Griffin. I love.
Speaking of eating meals, man. Sorry to cut you off. I love when he's talking about the meals. He's like, "Listen, you can't be in here with me for up to a couple hours after I eat because it's just fucked up."
You're gonna see everything digesting in my body, which is great.
Great imagery.
Yeah. Which I think you see in Hollow Man. They like show him chewing gum and. I think if I remember correctly, like you could see it going through his body. What's funny is that the new Invisible Man film, the remake, it's a suit. It's not a chemical, like it's not an accident with chemicals or anything like that. So it's weird that they changed it for the kind of reimagining version of the Invisible Man. But yeah, man, his look, I think it's iconic. I don't see it enough too. Like I feel like I don't see enough merch of him. I even joked around with my wife. I was like, "Oh, I might dress up as the Invisible Man this year for Halloween." Like you don't see too many people like the band. Well, the bandage Invisible. Grimey, I'm gonna become invisible. I'm gonna leave the room and tell people
I'm start eating chemicals.
Yes,
hope for the best. Holy shit!
I'm gonna tell people when I go to like their Halloween party, like I'm there. You just can't see me. I'm the Invisible Man.
Perfect.
That's it. That's my Halloween costume. I'm just gonna not show up to shit and tell people I'm the Invisible Man. But no, the bandage up version, I was like, oh, that's kind of that'd be a cool costume. I don't think I've never seen anyone dress up. I've seen Frankenstein,
Me either, man.
Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, even Mummy. You see a bunch of bandaged up mummies. You don't see, and I know the Universal Monsters. There is a branded with the Universal Monster branding, official costume of the Invisible Man. But I'd kind of make my own, like buy the glasses, bandage, coat.
That would be pretty easy.
Be a lot better than like the store bought one.
I want to help you. Let me be your partner.
I've had a cold and uncomfortable journey just to keep my promise at 10 o'clock. I went into the police station with you, Kemp. I stood by while you changed into that coat. I rode on the running board of the car that took you home again.
All right, Grimey. Anything else? Any other likes before we dive into dislikes?
No, I think we've covered just about everything. If you want to jump into the dislikes, because I don't got very much for that either. So.
I don't. These are nitpicks. Obviously, Grimey and I enjoyed this film. I will say this. So the couple, and I did write down their names here in my dislike. So it's Jenny and Herbert Hall. They're the innkeeper of the... It's the Lion's Head Inn is the name of the bed and breakfast inn, whatever.
I love that, by the way, because when I was living in Pittsburgh, Lion's Head beer was all we drank. So like, I wondered if that was. I don't know much about the backstory of Lion's Head Beer, and I wondered if maybe that was something, but probably not.
Maybe.
But anyways, continue.
That would be kind of cool. I've never had Lion's Head Beer. Now I'm intrigued, Grimey. So,
oh, they're great, man. They
I
got
gotta
the
try
little
one.
puzzles underneath the caps.
Damn.
It's great.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
go
you
out of my
gotta
way
check
to
'em out.
find some now. That sounds amazing. All right, so my dislike. So Jenny and Herbert Hall. Now I do like the performance. I do get what James Whale did, mostly with her, with the character of Jenny Hall. But I will admit, she becomes a little annoying by like the third or second scream, where it becomes almost too hammy.
It's too much
Like
over the
early
top.
on, she
Yeah.
screams, ah, when she sees, when he reveals that he's invisible. Then she does it again. Then she does it again. Then she does like a fourth time. And I'm just like, all right, you're beating you're beating a dead horse here. Like it gets a little almost annoying in a sense where it's like,
A little
all right.
redundant.
It's not even the redundancy. It's just like the performance. Like she's good in the beginning, but then like it starts to slowly, like she's hamming it up almost. It's almost like he loved, like James Whale told her, I love that, keep doing that. And she went up a notch every performance screaming. So that was kind of my only gripe when it comes to those characters. The husband was fine. I love that he gets the shit beat out of him. He's shook. He's scared of Griffin at that point. But yeah, I just thought it got a little kind of like, ugh, it's a little hammy there. My second dislike, and this is it for me with the dislikes or things I would have adjusted in the film if I were in charge. Flora could have used another scene. She feels kind of useless in this movie up until, and I know we've joked, women were never treated good in these movies. They were kind of just MacGuffins for the male leads, and they're kind of treated like shit. Oh, shut up! You're a woman. You don't know any better. Smack her up a little bit. You know, that was like that's how women were treated in these films. I don't mean to laugh. It is disrespectful, but in this movie, and I don't know. So from what I read, the character of Flora was not in the original source material. They added her in for the film. So like they kind of just wrote her into a story that otherwise didn't need a female lead. It didn't need a love interest. So she feels, up until this point, probably the most one note of all the female leads.
Easily.
Because even in The Mummy, she was great. I remember us saying how she even plays into she plays into his defeat, and the men don't play into the defeat at the end of The Mummy. Whereas this, Flora just sort of vanishes. Like she's in the beginning, she disappears until she meets up with Griffin, and then doesn't show up till the very end to kind of comfort him as he's dying. So she doesn't really do anything. It's a very underwritten character. And I'm not saying that, the performance is bad. It's just one note. It doesn't really, the movie didn't need her.
It definitely feels like one step forward, two steps back with this film when it comes to the damsel in distress, I guess. To the point where I almost didn't realize that she was a love interest. I figured she was just worried about some guy. Like if you weren't paying attention to what they were saying, you wouldn't ultimately think that it was a love interest in a sense. But yeah, maybe if they would have showed them together in the beginning, maybe like in his invisible state, like his visible state, maybe like before all this happened, or like a flashback or something, like anything. Like maybe she's sitting in her room and thinking about him and hoping he's okay or something. I don't know, like a nice little flashback.
Yeah, I mean, she could have even used another scene, maybe where like Griffin approaches Flora and he's like, hey, meet me here before I go do this crazy, like before he went on a rampage or something. And like, he explained his plan to her or something. And she does tell him like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. We joke that she doesn't even like react to the craziness he's saying. So like maybe one more short scene where she kind of is giving him some pushback, like, hey, Griffin, this isn't right. Maybe you shouldn't do this. And maybe he freaks out on her. He's like, you don't know anything. And he shows his true colors. That would have made her feel a little less useless, in my opinion. Yeah. I hate to use that word, but that's what she feels like in this movie. It's like a useless character. She adds, like Kemp does way more. the Jenny and Herbert Hall, the innkeepers, do more in this film, in my opinion, than Flora.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there
Yeah.
with that, though, because then if he would have freaked out on her, she's supposed to be his kryptonite, right?
Yes.
So, like, if he would have shown his true colors, that would have, the character development is just showing its colors there. Like, it's just, that would have made him seem so much more menacing if he was just like, you know what, actually, fuck you too.
It's true. Like, it would have been like, all right, this guy's completely lost it. Even his...
That would have been powerful.
Exactly. So that's kind of... And again, I don't know if this was... these movies are an hour and 10 minutes long. It's the 30s. I don't know if maybe they felt like, oh, that didn't need it. But that's what I would... If I was remaking this film, same script, that's what I would add to it. Was one more scene with Flora to kind of give her a little more oomph than just being like, oh, my baby. Oh, at the very end, where it's like... This guy just murdered a bunch of people and wanted to destroy the world for you, and you have no real kind of... It has not fazed you whatsoever. Just a bizarre choice coming from a very talented director. So I'm just surprised that he let that slide, that James Whale let that slide. Grimey, any dislikes?
I have none. I didn't list any. Aside from the couple that we kind of already mentioned. Yeah, I thought the innkeeper, specifically the lady, I thought that was a little bit over the top. Mm-hmm. It didn't... I got it in the initial... the initial scene where you start seeing her freaking out. It's funny. It's meant to be kind of funny. After we've seen it 3-4 times, I was like, all right, this is kind of enough, because it does get a little too much towards the last scene there.
It's like borderline Lucy, like screaming and make it weird. I don't know what the scream. It was a weird. I was like, all right, this is cool. Oh, no. All right, she's done. It's over. Stop.
Yeah. Aside from that, no, man, I don't have any dislikes. I really enjoyed this film quite a bit. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Like, when we think about the Invisible Man, like, I always, whenever it comes to any kind of Universal monsters, I always revert back to, like, where I've seen them in pop culture, like in the 90s and stuff, when, Frito-Lay and Pepsi and all that good stuff. Like, I don't think of these people as being like murderers and stuff like that. I think of them as being party animals. And when you finally figure out what they're about, it's like kind of an eye opener. And this is awesome, man. This is, I would actually revisit this one a lot more now that I've seen it. It's just so interesting. And like the time and effort that they put into making this film, like it's fucking art, man. It's so good.
Did the Invisible Man get a Fritos Lay? Isn't there a Fritos Lay's ad where he's wearing glasses and you can't see him? You see like his hat, I think. Or am I losing my mind?
So no. And I don't remember what year it was, but he was the mascot for Crystal Pepsi at one point.
There you go. I knew he was.
He wore like
there.
like I can't remember exactly what it even looked like. Like I have it actually in the next room. But it's an interesting box that the cans came in. But yeah, he was there for the second or third run of Universal Monsters Pepsi Frito-Lay stuff, and it's awesome, man.
That's a little tease for a future episode. I'm sure Grimey and I will be doing in the future, where we're going to talk about some of our favorite kind of Universal Monster tie-ins and things, etc. I'm sure that's coming down the pipeline once we get a couple more movies in. But my final thoughts on The Invisible Man. I agree with everything you said, Grimey. This is an outstanding science fiction horror film. I think it blends the genre together tightly. It does a really good job at kind of melding kind of the horrific aspect you'd expect with a monster movie, but then also sort of the science fiction part of it. Like even dare I say, not as much as Frankenstein, but like the idea of this guy having an accident and not being controlled. Because, in that one, life is created and that's misunderstood. This is a guy who was human, had a life, and then him being so obsessed with these experiments backfiring on him. So I love how he kind of just melds those two genres together and kind of does it perfectly. When you think of science fiction horror movies back in the 30s or whatever, Universal Monster era, this is kind of what you think of. This, Frankenstein, a little bit of the Creature from the Black Lagoon when we get to him. But I loved it, man. It was a great revisit. More people need to give the Invisible Man love. I'm looking forward to us covering the sequels because, like I said before, I have not seen them, so I don't know where. I know Vincent Price plays the Invisible Man in the future, which I can't wait.
I did see that.
I
Very
can't wait
excited
to
get
watch
into
that one. Yeah, that should be a good one. I've never seen any of the sequels, so I just look forward to more adventures with the Invisible Man.
I shall come back to you, Flora, very soon now. The secret of invisibility lies there in my books. I shall work in Kent's laboratory till I find the way back. There is a way back, Flora, and then I shall come to you. I shall offer my secret to the world with all its terrible power. The nations of the world will bid for it, thousands, millions. The nation that wins my secret can sweep the world with invisible armies.
So that was the Invisible Man. Grimey, next up, we've got the Black Cat.
Absolutely, man. I'm stoked. I can't wait. I've never heard of it, never watched it, so it's going to be a fun one, I think.
Should be a good time. That one will be out soon. We won't take 4 months off to get to the next film, hopefully. Grimey,
right.
Where can people find you and Leftover Pizza?
So you can check us out on Instagram. We now have Blue Sky. If you're interested in that, you can check us out on X if you're still cruising over there, and Facebook. We also have a group on Facebook, the Leftover Pizza Club, where you can hang out with like-minded peeps and join some interesting nostalgic discussion. And if that's not enough, check us out on our website, leftoverpizzaclub.com. And lastly, listen to us wherever you catch your podcasts.
And be sure to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, at Haunted Hangover. Head over to hauntedhangover.com where you can find links to everything, including our Patreon page, where you can gain early access to episodes, bonus content, and much more. Rate and review us. It'd be greatly appreciated. And as always, remember, the best cure for a hangover is...
more booze.
You can't see me. Word life.
John
Cena. Invisible Man.
Invisible Man.
The one and only Invisible Man.